Welcome to the final practice, well, what is intended to be the final practice of our challenge. It is not a yoga so much as a roll and release. So in honor of that, you will need two balls. So 2 tennis balls or any other ball that you have, but try to make sure they're the same hardness. So because we're going to use 2 to roll the erector spinae muscles, so you want 2 that are the same because otherwise it'll be a bit awkward and you won't get the same on each side. Okay, so we are going to start with the feet. Now if you think of the sole of the foot, cool, good times, mine are pretty grubby. You want across the ball of the foot, down one side, triangle point at the heel, and then up the other side. Also you're rolling a triangle. Now before we get started, we are rolling slow. So that triangle of the foot, we're rolling each spot for about 2 minutes, each spot. So each foot will be 2 minutes. And in that time, in that 2 minutes, you'll probably only get 2 laps of the foot. So it doesn't matter if you don't get 2, it doesn't matter if you get 3, but the idea is to not zip around it and, get 50 laps in that 2 minutes, because we're trying to be slow, sustained pressure because we're rolling the fascia rather than the muscle. So this requires deeper effort. So I do have my old phone here on the ground as my stopwatch, so I can make sure that I do use the same amount of time each side. Good. So you need 1 ball. Choose a foot. Doesn't matter which one you start from, or if you do follow Thai massage, then women start on the left, men start on the right. So you can do that if you like. And just beginning, and it doesn't matter which direction you go, whether you go along the ball of the arch and then across and then down or the other way. That doesn't matter which way you do the lap, but go slow. So the idea is to try and give it as much pressure where it's not hideously painful. My myofascial release teachers did call it delicious discomfort. So that's what we're after. It should be slightly uncomfortable, a little bit weird and a little bit kind of ouchy, but also kind of nice at the same time. So you're only at 40 seconds so far, so hopefully not quite around the foot yet. And just moving slow. If you do find spots that are a little bit more, shall we say, crunchy or a little bit more interesting, try not to zip over them. Try to give them the same amount of attention that you're giving the rest of the foot. Chances are good, you're halfway through by the way, chances are good that you'll find some pretty interesting spots in the arch. Most people do, even people who, like I do, get around barefoot a lot and have quite flexible toes and feet. So it's just one of those things that we kind of get these interesting little spots where things clag up a little bit. So rolling slow, we've got about 30 seconds left on that foot. So trying to be really consistent with the pressure. Rolling across, 15 seconds more. Just be mindful to not skim. Good. Nice. And release, so stop there. And from here, before we do the other foot, so you can just rush off to the other foot if you've seen me do this before, but what I would invite you to do is just bring the feet hip distance apart and then just fold it forward, let the body hang, and just tune in and just see, does it feel a little bit different from side to side? Does the foot or the whole left side whatever side you've rolled, does that feel a little easier when you fold forward? Because for most of us it tends to. So even just releasing the feet releases everything else along that chain, which is the whole back side of the body. So we can actually gain more mobility and range just from rolling the soles of our feet. So let's do the other side. Okay, so you're starting on the other foot. So again, going for that triangle, trying to keep it really slow and controlled. Same sort of pressure. So hopefully you did feel a difference. Probably should have done the test prior to rolling and then doing, but anyways, sometimes I forget these things. So we go slow. You're 30 seconds in. So you're finding that pressure that's going to give enough to make a difference, but not so much that you're overloading the tissue. So we are working with fascia, which is connective tissue, and if you think, it permeates the entire body from the inside out. From underneath the skin, you have that superficial fascia, which is almost like a body stocking underneath the skin, and then it wraps around each muscle fiber and then around each muscle cell, around each muscle. It's kind of the scaffolding for all of your organs. So it is literally throughout the body, and it's all connected. So that's why if we roll the feet, we can release the rest of the body just by rolling the feet. And by the same token, if we have a stuck spot in the fascia, so whether it is scar tissue or somewhere that's just no longer getting hydrated, then that will stick. And then that little stuck spot is then going to impact all the other structures in the body. So you've got 20 seconds more. I was worried about whether I'd be able to waffle on and keep you entertained while you're rolling this whole time, but apparently I'm good at waffling. So we got 5 more seconds there. Slowly rolling out the feet. Good. And then we release that ball to the side, stopping there, and then bringing your feet back to hip distance apart. So we just got to round this out and slowly fold it forward. And then just notice, can you get further than you usually would when you roll forward or when you fold forward? Do you feel a little easier in the lower back and in the hamstrings? Hopefully you do. And from here, we slowly roll up to standing. Good, so you need the ball. Good. Okay, so now we are actually going to come to sitting, sorry. So we come all the way down. And we are going to work on, so we're going for not the iliotibial band, so the IT band. We're going for a little muscle that sits at the top of the IT band, which actually inserts into the IT band, and it can actually create some of the tension in the IT band that we often experience. The IT band itself is highly sensory, so when you roll it, sometimes it hurts because it's tight, but mostly it's just because there's so many sensory receptors in the IT band. And when you really roll it hard, they're like, and they just kind of wig out. So we're going for the TFL. So if you find the top of your hip bone, so the outside of the top of the hip bone, and then come down underneath that iliac crest, you'll feel like a nice little squishy, soft bit. And then if you go a little further down, you'll then feel where your femur bone and your thigh bone is plugging into the hip. So there's that space between the top of the hip bone and roughly where your thigh bone connect. That's where we're going for. So we're going to roll onto one side. And unfortunately, I usually am able to tell that people are in the right spot because I see their face change. Unfortunately, I can't do that. So you'll have to just judge it yourself, and you'll feel when you've got it. So you're just below the hip bone, not on the bone, just underneath it, and you're just gently rolling that space. So you can go a little bit forwards, backwards, up and down, and just try to really release that little space between the top of the hip bone and the thigh bone plugging in. So if you are kind of enjoying it, which you might, you can lift that bottom leg a little. So that's actually going to create a little more tension in that space, so you can add a little extra something to what you're doing there with the rolling. That is absolutely optional extra. Not everyone's going to take me up on that one. So still trying to give as much pressure as is going to give you that discomfort without like horrendousness. So you're halfway through here. So just by rolling this, we can actually help to ease that IT band. So if you do run a lot, this can help, because we don't actually want to stretch our IT band. We don't want to release it. it is a structural component, really. So the IT band is there to help support us when we're shifting our weight from side to side, when we walk, when we run, or even if we're just balancing on one leg. So it's helping to support us. Okay, the glutes get engaged, but also the IT band is there for support. So if you have that kind of all floppy, then it's really not going to be a good time for your balance and your walking and your running. So we kind of want to leave it alone a little bit. You have 10 more seconds to go on this side. 5. Good, and then we release it. Okay, and we're switching sides. So remember, it is a 2 minutes. Our fascia requires, so find that spot sitting underneath that hip bone. Okay, so the fascia does require at least 2 minutes of that strong, sustained pressure to make any changes, to release it. Okay, so just rolling super quick for 30 seconds is not actually going to help the connective tissue. It might help the muscles a little, but it's not actually getting to that deeper tissue. So that's why the 2 minutes, it's not arbitrary, it's actually legit. So the most change occurs between 2 and 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, not much happens. Before 2 minutes, nothing really happens. So that's your little window. And because we do only have half an hour for this class, I'm trying to keep it to the 2 minutes just so we can get a few more spots rather than go the 4 minutes. So we're kind of trying to hit the key spots here. So being gentle, but at the same time, you're halfway through too, by the way. So you're still keeping that consistent pressure, because it does actually need a consistent pressure. You can't really just kind of come and go from it. It needs consistent pressure for that 2 minutes to change. We have 40 seconds more. And again, try not to skim over the bits that are really a little bit crunchier than others. They kind of need a little bit of love, so don't try to run away from them. So same with our practice. Like often we get into a pose and it feels challenging and we want to kind of run away from it, but we try to stay with it, stay in each pose and stay with the rolling. So the benefits are found on the other end of that discomfort. We have 5 more seconds. Good, and then coming up, well done, you did it. Okay, so we stop. Okay, so for our next one, so hopefully your outer legs feel a little bit more mobile now. So we've got a little bit more space there. So for our next one, we will actually roll, we're going to get for the insertion point or around the insertion of the latissimus dorsi muscle. So the latissimus dorsi muscle runs from the arm down the side, so it gives that V shape. When people have got developed lats and a small waist, it gives that V shape. So that's where they are. So we're rolling, it's pretty much the armpit, but just to the back of the armpit. So you don't want to actually roll the armpit. There are a lot of lymph nodes and things like that in the armpit, so we kind of don't want to squish those. But what we're after is finding that space. So when you're laying on your back, you may need to actually keep the ball there. It depends on your body, but it's to the back of the armpit. And for this one, you will roll, but at the same time, if you want to make it a little bit more intense for yourself, you can lift that arm overhead, wrap it across the body so you can feel into what's happening. Move really slow. So the same as when you roll slow. We move real slow. Sorry, my stopwatch keeps turning off. Okay, so find that spot just in the armpit. For many of us, it can be quite an interesting area. When I teach this at gyms, they are all a bit, so they suck in the breath. And this is another important point, is to make sure you are breathing here. So move the body slowly, move the ball slowly, and breathe slowly. So this is meant to be a nice, restorative, almost like a reward at the end of the 2 weeks. It's not meant to be a punishment, hopefully. It's not that. But it's also meant to be very relaxing and like a recovery session. So kind of treat it that way and see it as a bit of self-care, if you will. I mean, the whole challenge is self-care, right? But this is kind of that nice little, just a treat at the end. And if it's not a treat during the process of it, it will probably feel like a treat at the end of it. Like the body will just feel lighter, more able to move. We've got 45 seconds left here. So all of these spots, they carry some tension, but they also can get really stuck and gummed up. So one of the jobs of the fascia is to create a sliding surface between muscle fibers, between the muscle and the skin, between muscle and other tissues, and it's meant to be hydrated and slidey. And what happens in a dehydrated body is it no longer slides, and so then that is one of the big reasons we lose range of motion, because we've let the fascia get dehydrated and then it gets disorganized, and then that creates problems all down the line. Alright, so now we switch sides, take the ball out, bring it over to the other side. So find that spot. So all of the spots that we're rolling, particularly going side to side, we might find differences side to side. So you might find one side feels fine and the other side is just all sorts of crunchy. So just get curious. Same as with a yoga practice. You're getting curious about what's happening in your own body. Start to get to know the body. Start to find any imbalances. Because often imbalances are not sort of current. An imbalance could still exist in the body from an old injury and a compensation pattern that you began when you had an old injury. So it's not necessarily something new. So you might have some weird issue going on with your shoulder, but it's actually coming from compensation from when you had a knee injury 10 years ago. So this is what the fascia does. So it is super important to keep it healthy. And one of the ways that we keep it hydrated is to move. So we need to release, to move it, and then you can drink the water. So if you're just drinking water and not moving, the water is not getting really absorbed into that tissue. It's just kind of flowing through. So that's where we sort of still manage to be dehydrated even though we are still drinking water. So this is one of the reasons why we did the chair yoga, the yoga you could do at work, is so that you're moving still. So even if you're sitting at your desk, you can still be moving, you can still start to open up the tissue and allow flow. We have 15 seconds more here. Deep breath while you're here. Good, and then we release that one. And so from there, so now you will need your two, so you'll need your second ball. Okay, I don't have two of the same, so I've cheated and got my peanut. So it's pretty much the same thing as two balls stuck together. You don't need to stick the balls together though. So if you are sitting on a mat though, you might want to scoot right down to the very end. Or if you've only got a certain amount of space behind you, same thing, scoot right away, because we're going to bring one ball each side of the spine, and we're starting right up at the base of the neck. So it's not on the neck, it's just on the shoulders at the base of the spine. Cool. So one on each side, they don't need to be stuck together, it's fine, they'll work. And then you're slowly rolling your way down. So just be mindful of clothes that could get stuck, and just rolling your way down those So you have two lines of muscles on either side of the spine, the erector spinae muscles, and these are postural muscles. They're tight, so they're used to being switched on all the time, and we get quite tense through there. And what you might be able to do, or what you might find feels good or not, is when you get in between the shoulders, is to actually wrap your arms around yourself, and if you like, just kind of a little rock from side to side. So you can find that extra little space, because the trapezius and the rhomboids, that strip around the shoulders and between the shoulders and the spine can carry a lot of stuck spots. Some of us get pretty crunchy through there. So find your two balls, roll onto your back, make sure you've got space. And we actually stay on this one for a little while longer than 2 minutes because it's quite a long stretch of the body. So we start at the base of the neck and then slowly work your way down toward the bottom of the rib cage. So we're kind of stopping at the bottom of the rib cage there. So just slowly. So you are here for a few minutes. And make sure you're breathing here. Deep, full breath, really slow and controlled. So most people do find this one is the treat. It is the nice little reward. So it can be some really tense spots, but at the same time it feels really nice. So just slowly work your way along the length of the spine. So ideally, spending almost a minute per section, if you will, so sort of between the neck and the shoulder blades, so roughly a minute, so about now. So now you're starting to move in between the shoulder blades, traveling that thoracic spine between the shoulders. So taking a minute or two here, just slowly, and even pausing for a moment and hugging yourself and doing that little rock from side to side. So just be curious with it and be generous with it to yourself. So you're here for another 3 minutes on the back. So make the most of it. Find those spots. So you're only working from the shoulders to the bottom of the ribs. And don't panic if you don't get all the... So as far as you do get, you're still going to get a lot of the benefits from the rolling, even if you don't quite make it all the way to the base of the rib cage. So take your time and explore. So close the eyes and really tune in. I mean, this practice does tend to invite that and create that internal practice anyway. So it's a way to really get to know your body and what's happening in it. And remember too that the fascia is one of our biggest sensory organs. So it's really feeding back to the brain so much information all the time. And so when we are rolling it out and we're starting to get to know it, the body's getting to know itself again. Because when there is little stuck spots in the fascia, then they're dark spots that the brain can't quite get into. So they're little spots that aren't sending any information. They're kind of clagging up the communication. So when we unroll, we're actually literally reacquainting ourselves with these spots and with the whole body. So we're reconnecting everything. So it's nice to be able to take that time out and spend the time going in, right? So don't be hasty about it. Just really tune in and be a bit luxurious with it. How often do you give yourself time to just kind of roll around on the floor, right? So allow yourself this time and to really just sink into it. Be curious about where those little spots are. They're different for all of us and they're probably different side to side. So just get interested. Get to know what's going on. So you have another minute left. And if you do find that you're really enjoying this and when I call time you're thinking, hell no, I'm staying here, then do feel free to stay there for another minute or so. Just because I've called it, just stay there and press pause on this recording, and then just come back to it when you're done with the extra rolling down the length of the back. Okay, so I'm not going anywhere. So you can come down when you need to, or if you're kind of ready, when in about 30 seconds, we'll be pulling the balls out and then moving on to the next spot. So you can always stay there a little longer and then come on to the next spot when you're ready, or come along for the ride with me, depends on where you're at. So you have 15 seconds more. It's that last little bit of love in the erector spinae muscles, still down the back. 5 seconds more. And nice, and now we slowly come out. So we're taking the 2 balls out to the side, move them out. So you need to keep one and distich the other one. So now we're coming into a really nice little spot at the base of the neck. So if you run your hand along the spine, up along the neck, until where the spine meets your skull, and then just off to one side. So you're finding the base of the skull, where the base of the skull meets the spine, and off to one side. The ball will come in there, and you may or may not need to hold it there, depends on you. And so you're starting off to one side of the spine, and then the rolling is slowly rolling your head, turning to the side. So I'll just turn the other way. So you're rolling the ball along the base of the skull towards the ear. So it's right along the base of the skull. So it's not actually on the skull, it's just the very edge, and you're rolling out towards the ear. So picking one side, make sure you're not on the spine, you're just off to the side. And giving yourself that little neck massage, really. So it's kind of finishing off the line that we started on the feet. So you're slowly rolling across the base of the skull. And usually after a yoga practice, in Shavasana, after a yoga practice, I like to do the neck massages. And unfortunately can't do that at the moment, and distance and all of that kind of thing. So this is a way that you can DIY your neck massage. So it's that really nice way to finish off a practice. It's a very freeing practice, and it's a really nice way to nurture the self. So you're just giving yourself this little bit of time. This is the last area that we're going to roll for the practice. Because of the nature of it, we don't have a lot of time. So you have just under a minute left on this side. So just slowly exploring along the edge of the skull, trying not to come up onto the skull itself, just getting into those muscles that connect in there. They can hold a lot of tension, and they can get quite stuck. And often this is a cause of headaches, is when we've got tension and stuck spots in the neck. So it's a nice idea to roll them out. You just have 20 seconds more. Still letting the breath flow. Try to keep the breath full and slow. Good, and then we switch sides to take the ball out and bring it to the other side of the spine. So just on the edge of the spine, on the edge of the occiput. And we roll the other side. So just completing the full body, or the hot spots of the body, if you will. Accessing those spots that get a lot of sticky spots and a lot of tension. So this is our last little one. And hopefully you do have time after this for a mini Shavasana. Because it's quite deep work, because our fascia is the deepest tissue. So when we work the fascia, it is very deep work. And so if you have time to just be peaceful, to relax afterwards, then do please give yourself that time. Allow yourself to just rest. And then when you do get up, make sure you get some water. Keep moving. So you have 1 more minute. You want to make sure that you keep the body moving, and after your rest, move, drink, and allow that body to rehydrate. So allowing the flow and the movement. So it's not just movement of the external body or that range of movement that we think of and can see. It's movement of all the information in the body. And you just have 30 seconds more. Just closing the eyes. It's slow and intentional. And then taking the ball out to the side. And then if you do have that rest time, please take that rest. And thank you very much for joining me for this 2-week challenge. And congratulations and well done for finishing.